Hey, what up guys? Aaron Zastupa, better known as Aaron Brook the Gamer here, representing Monkey Hammer Games. In this video I'm going to be analysing several games, looking at how they were created. I'll be exploring the worlds and everything contained, such as the NPCs that roam it, all the way to the towns and cities. First on our list we have the extremely popular Elder Scrolls installment Skyrim. This epic tale saw the player, better known as the Dragonborn, or Dovahkiin, exploring mass expanses of lands, caves, rivers and snowy mountains. The world, heavily influenced by Nordic and Celtic themes, is an immensely immersive place, which has always been the case with Bethesda games. In the beginning of the game, we get to see a good view of the type of world that Skyrim is. As the main protagonist is brought to Helgen, a soon-to-be place of ruin, we see a shy amount of Skyrim's snowy landscape, filled with wildlife such as deer and rabbits. As the prisoner enters Helgen, the world of Skyrim, along with its Nordic and Celtic themes, are made very apparent. The foundations of the houses are made from cobble, followed by a wooden set of walls, doors and windows. To top off the houses, entire thatched roofs. These houses bear great resemblance to houses that can still be found in countries such as Norway today. As the Dragonborn reaches the end of the line, he is able to look around at his surroundings. This is where you get a sense of the type of cities that lay within Skyrim's borders. The player can hear outroar from the crowd that has gathered to watch the leader of the rebellion put to death. As the cries of hatred go on in the background, the player finally gets to see themselves for the first time in character creation. This menu allows the player to see all the races that the Dragonborn will encounter throughout the lands of Skyrim. Each race has its own lore along with special abilities that go with it, which grants the player a special power once per day. Once the player has finalised his character and has chosen a name, he will be moved towards the headsman along with the Stormcloak rebels he has found himself with. This is a scene that really stands out within Skyrim's introduction, as it shows the bravery and courage of the Stormcloak soldiers, as the soldier speeds up his demise by stopping the priestess from granting his last words. As this is taking place, roars can be heard echoing through the mountains. This clearly strikes fear within everyone at the courtyard, but the general insists the beheadings take place. As the Dragonborn takes his place at the chopping block, he faces up to see the main antagonist, Alduin, land on the rooftop, knocking down the headsman. The beast uses the power of the voice to immediately change the weather into a glum, clouded storm that also happens to be dropping fire from the sky because, why not? He's the son of a god and also a dragon. This intense action-packed start fuels the adventure that the Dragonborn is about to take upon himself, whilst giving the player a strong idea of the type of combat he or she can expect within Skyrim. Next on our list is another installment of Bethesda, but this time it's set in the future, with lasers and stuff. That's right, we're going to take a look at Fallout New Vegas. This game takes place in the radioactive, mutated gecko-filled, cannibal-inhabited wasteland of post-apocalyptic America, specifically in Nevada. This open-world first-person shooter engulfs the player in locations and landmarks based around the real world. The world of New Vegas is filled with abandoned houses, villages and radioactive caves, all of which really add to the whole nuclear bombs fell here 200 years ago feel that Bethesda intended. This, however, is just the tip of the iceberg. Taking a look at two of my favourite towns in Fallout New Vegas gives us a better look at how the world is really represented. Firstly, we'll take a look at the town of Nipton, a place that was once known for its gambling, cheap alcohol and even cheaper women. This heavenly sounding place was packed with everything you would expect from a normal town. A general store, a place to drink, places to live. That is, until the mayor decided to make a deal with the Legion, who then turned the entire town into a smouldering pit of ashes. Now the town can be found flying Legion flags and banners, along with those deemed unworthy crucified in the streets. This town represents the fear that fuels the people of New Vegas, as it shows the dominance of the main antagonistic party, Caesar's Legion. My other favourite town is the town of Primm, located just south of where the courier awakens in Goodsprings. Primm was once a place where couriers and traders could rest, eat and gamble. Once the NCRCF, or the New Californian Republic Correctional Facility, was overrun by convicts, the first town that they went to was Primm, taking over and taking the entire town hostage. Once the courier reaches Primm, he can make the decision to eliminate the convicts and bring law to Primm. This opens up multiple pathways for how the town of Primm will function, and grants different benefits and drawbacks to the player. In my opinion, which is the correct opinion, bringing NCR law to Primm is the best option. This choice allows for the NCR to impose their laws and taxes to Primm, and in turn protects the townspeople from raiders, convicts and Caesar's Legion. The benefit of this is the player will gain a lot of positive reputation with the NCR. However, he will also have to pay the increased cost when bartering with the people in Prim due to the new tax laws. The reason this town stands out to me is because it allows the player to visually see how the NCR reflects modern day societies in terms of diplomacy and law. Outside the towns of New Vegas, there are the sometimes unsettling places such as the radioactive caves, old nuclear test sites, and vaults. Vaults are pieces of the old world, now left to decay by their former inhabitants. Before the bombs fell, America could feel the war coming. This is why underground bunkers were built by Vault-Tec in order to preserve humanity. On the day that the bombs fell, thousands of people sought refuge in these vaults, given the instructions to only open them back up in 200 years once the fallout had died down. Once the 200 years had passed, the people inside ventured out into the world to try and rebuild the old world, which is where factions such as the Boomers come from, leaving Vault 34 and taking over Nellis Airfield. Next up on our list, we have a game developed by the same guys who created Garry's Mod, Rust. Rust doesn't have a generic map. Instead, Rust randomly generates a map each time a server is created. This gives the game more variety to players who have hundreds of hours into the game. Even though the map is randomly generated, so mountains, rivers, and so forth are placed randomly, every map has the same basic idea. There are 3 basic environments: snow, grassland or forest, and sand or desert. The snowy areas of the map are generally at the very top or bottom of the map, as the player is required to wear warm clothing, as the harsh, cold weather applies negative effects such as loss of health and faster hunger depletion. The snowy biome is usually flat, with the exception of a couple of mountains. Though it isn't confirmed, many players suspect that the biome that you are in reflects the type and amount of animals that spawn in your area. If the player finds himself in the snowy biome, he can expect less friendly spawns such as rabbits and boars, and more frequent spawns of vicious wolves that will attack the player on sight, which adds a well-needed survival aspect to the game. The next biome found within the Rust map is the desert biome, which can usually be found towards the bottom of the map. This empty wasteland contains a huge amount of resources, including metal, stone, and oil. Players will often be seen wearing minimal amounts of clothing in this area, as the heat from the sun overheats the player, causing them to slowly die of exhaustion. In the desert, the player is not likely to find any animals to hunt, which is expected within the desert, as not much can really survive. Though there is an abundance of oil and metal, there aren't many trees within the desert environment, so the player will have to sometimes travel great distances to collect this basic resource. The final biome within the Rust game is the forest area. This is the most popular area for people looking to build their house because, as the name suggests, there are a lot of trees in this area. The player will also find increased spawns of almost everything, including chickens, boars, deer, wolves and bears, which can all be hunted for their fat, fur and meat. On top of these perks, the player will also often find pieces of flatland, which contain many resources such as stone and metal. However, new players should be warned that the forest will be filled with angry 12-year-olds who are overly trigger happy and are very willing to kill you over a pumpkin seed. In all of these areas, the player has a chance to come along pre-generated buildings and landmarks that heavily influence where players build their bases, as high-quality loot such as weapons and metal armor pieces can be found within. These buildings include Radtown, which is a few buildings with crates surrounding for the player to loot. The vehicle graveyard, which, as the name suggests, is a place filled with old broken vehicles, once again filled with crates for the players to loot. The airfield, which is a long landing strip accompanied by 3 hangars and a little warehouse, which all contain barrels and crates for players to loot. The warehouse, which is a small shack type of building, which contains a research bench and more crates for the players to loot. The dome, which players can come for the oil that lays underneath, or can scale the side of this huge landmark to find loot such as guns and blueprints. Finally, the player can also find lighthouses, the antenna, and the Civ house, but all of these still need work from the developers. The next game on our list is the extremely popular MOBA, League of Legends. This game, inspired by Dota, has several maps within its world, but we're going to take a look at the most played map, Summoner's Rift. The Summoner's Rift, also known as a Field of Justice, is where most players will usually find themselves when playing League of Legends. The map features a number of intermediate objectives which provide a range of advantages, which assist the player in achieving victory. The overall goal of the game is to destroy the enemy nexus, but to get to this, the player must destroy several mini-objectives. Firstly, turrets. Each lane has 2 outer turrets which fire bolts at minions, and also at enemy champions if they are aggressive within the tower's range. Once the player has destroyed these, he must then destroy the inhibitor turret, which is like the lane turrets, but with a different name. They also fire continuous laser beams. After this, the enemy team will have an open inhibitor which can be destroyed. All of these actions provide your team with global gold, meaning everyone gets an equal amount. Once the inhibitor has been destroyed, it triggers super minions which start spawning for 5 minutes until the inhibitor repairs itself. Both teams can do this to all 3 lanes within Summoner's Rift, which applies pressure to the enemy team. Once at least one of the inhibitors have been destroyed, the player can begin destroying the 2 Nexus turrets which guard the Nexus. These turrets are essentially the last thing standing between the player and victory, and once destroyed, allows the player to attack and destroy the enemy Nexus. While all of this is taking place, both teams have the option to take to their jungle to kill the monsters located inside. These monsters include the Blue Sentinel and the Red Brambleback, which both provide buffs to whoever lands a killing blow, which slightly increases combat statistics. There are also additional monsters, including Golems, Wolves, and Gromp, which will provide golden experience, but only a buff if the player uses the summoner spell Spite on them. Both teams also have the option to slay the dragon, which spawns every 6 minutes after it has been defeated. Killing the dragon will provide the allied team a buff, which stacks up to 5 times, giving the entire team increased combat abilities. The teams can also slay Baron Nashor, which spawns after 20 minutes and will respawn 7 minutes after it has been killed. Killing the Baron Nashor will provide all alive members of the team a huge buff to their damage, reduced recall time, and increases the power of all allied minions. The final game in our list is the SNES original, Super Mario World. This 2D side-scroller once again sees Mario and Luigi rescuing Princess Peach from the evil King Bowser and his Koopalings. The world of Super Mario World stuck to the original Mario theme of an over-the-world map, where a player can select their stage and make their way to Bowser's castle, and the side-scrolling playfield. In-game, the majority of the maps feature bright green grass, orange skies, and green fields in the background. This land is known as Dinosaur Land. Some levels, however, are set inside houses, castles, and even underwater. These levels are shown by their background, which will change depending on where Mario is. For instance, if Mario is in Bowser's castle, the walls will change to those expected to be inside a castle. Within the world, Mario can find pipes which will lead him to a subsection of a level, which usually contains things such as coins or mushroom buffs. Super Mario World introduced companions, as the player is able to locate Yoshi's Egg and ride him throughout levels. This changes the way that the player will traverse through a level, as Yoshi provides faster movement speed, as well as the ability to eat enemies. Along with the stage changing the world around him, the level also influences the type of enemy that spawns. In most levels where Mario is on the surface, regular enemies such as Koopas will spawn. But in stages such as the Ghost House, only ghost enemies such as Boo, Big Boo, and Ares will spawn. The world also sometimes features boss enemies such as Bowser, which changes the way the player must proceed with the level, as a different strategy is required to defeat a different boss.